Welcome back, everyone, to Red Spotlight and Happy New Year. Hi, Happy New Year, David. How are you doing today? This is the show that brings you everything coming out of the world of movies and more. Um, how did your Happy New Year go?
Good. Just family, food, all good.
And now it's officially 2024, which admittedly has not really. This happens every time we have hit a new year. It doesn't really sink in until at least the end of the month. That it's have to get used to a new year, a new number, and I'm sure I'm going to make that mistake many times throughout. But because we're in January now, we're now in the midst, or I should say the beginning of the awards season. There was a discussing film on Twitter. I had a whole schedule released of how it's going to be like from January, February, and March, and it's going to be pretty jam-packed. And of course, we've been doing our best so far to cover as much as we can, and we're going to have a little bit more of that today. But then also, as far because the Golden Globe Awards are going to be airing on, I believe, January 7th, which is the very day that this podcast is going to drop. So we're going to have some predictions and see how many we get right, how many we get wrong. We are not going to get right, and maybe some surprises that could happen later on in the season. It could happen right from the very first show, or it could go as expected. So we'll see how that goes. And we're also going to discuss some films that we have been seeing throughout these last few weeks. That's going to be today's show on Spotlight number 468. Okay. Let's go ahead and get some movies out of the way with, shall we? And these are not going to be very in-depth reviews whatsoever. It's just going to be a little bit of informing you guys about what I've been watching and how they are or not. Some films that we hadn't actually got the chance to talk too much about that we missed. The first of which happens to be Cocaine Bear, which I just saw yesterday. Unfortunately, it's just nowhere near as entertaining as that trailer initially suggested, which is what exactly the reviews had said so, which is why we kind of avoided it when it had come out months ago. There were bits and places where it was entertaining, but laughs were few and far in between, and ultimately it kind of didn't work at the end of it. But I think it's far from the worst thing that was released this year. More on that later. But it was it is disappointing because the premise for what, and as far as the entertainment factor for what this could have been, really should have been far more than what it was. So not great. Next was Evil Dead Rise. Now, this past summer, I mentioned that I delved into the Evil Dead franchise, the first, the second, then, of course, the third, which is called Army of Darkness, or I guess Medieval Dead, depending on who you talk to. The Sam Raimi films, which is probably the most unique trilogy I've ever seen. Because. So there happened to have been a new Evil Dead, which is not in the continuity of, I believe, the Raimi movies. It's just its own thing. And I got to say, it was pretty good. I wouldn't say it's great, but as far as like a horror movie, and by current horror movie standards, which are pretty high, I would say it's pretty good. It's not my favorite of the year. I would just say a favorite horror movie of the year, but it is, I think, definitely worth a watch. I also saw the Stan Lee documentary on Disney Plus, which in and of itself, I also thought was definitely a treat. I think people right now, like myself, have a pretty maybe awkward isn't the right way of saying it, but the relationship with Marvel right now isn't at its best for a lot of reasons. But you know what I will say, and that's why, I'm sure many people are like a bit, guarded about whether or not they actually want to watch documentary that kind of celebrates it. Well, it doesn't necessarily really do that, because I feel like, it's released on Disney Plus, it's gonna, talk a lot about the MCU, and that's the last 5 minutes. This is really delving into who this man was, and literally like the things you want to know more about, like how did he get started, where did he come from, where did he get these ideas from, like the comics, the heyday of the comics that he was a part of. And I shared some clips with you guys on the chat, which
Mhm.
what I thought were, literally, quite literally, very fascinating. And I think to me, one of the takeaways that I had from those clips that I sent was how funny it is that it's so easily squatted or squashed. This idea of like um, woke is bad and you should never delve into doing anything like that. And I think to me, uh, no one said it better than him. I think Stan Lee himself. I'm going to play you real quick from this clip when he talks about including different kinds of characters, and I think he was talking about in the context of when he created Black Panther.
How can you have stories that are supposed to take place in today's world and not include all the types of people we have and the types of situations?
I don't think anything else needs to be said.
Yeah.
That's just the perfect answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to tell a story in 2024 and not include all the people that exist? So, but it's definitely worth a watch. I thought it was a really cool documentary. I also saw 2 of Wes Anderson's short films on Netflix. There were adaptations of Roald Dahl. I don't know what it is lately, but like it's really hard to get into Wes Anderson's recent stuff without you wanting to bash your head against the wall. The Ratcatcher, which is according to review is supposed to be the most popular one of them all. I just was like literally like every second, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. Like there's just this thing that I guess it's very Wes Anderson. Did not care for them whatsoever. But I'm evidently I'm in the minority because these were really liked on Netflix. The next thing was a horror film, Hulu, which is from Searchlight Pictures. This is called No One Will See You. I think to me, what I was not expecting was this basically is a silent movie. It's not, because there's obviously sound effects. This deals with an alien invasion of sorts, so you hear what they sound like, you hear noises. Sound is very much in the picture, but I guess what I was stunned was that there was only one line of dialogue in the whole movie. I was not expecting that, and it
Right.
took me like a good 5 to 10 minutes when I realized, are they just not gonna talk for this whole movie? And you know what? I don't think they needed to. I think I was far more taken with the idea that this worked so well without there needing to be any kind of spoken word. Like everything that you needed to get was conveyed perfectly through the performance of Caitlin Dever, who I think most is known for her work in Booksmart, starring alongside Beanie Fieldstein. She carried this movie. And I thought that the horror aspect of it was brilliant. I was definitely horrified in the moments that I needed to be. It kept on edge. There was a point where I had to stand up and watch it because I just couldn't take it, how anxious it was making me. And then there is an ending that happens in this movie. And I don't know what happened with all the movies that were released in 2023, but there definitely seemed to be a theme. And the theme was bold endings. And you're not going to see it coming. And what happens is kind of hilarious and beautiful at the same time. And it's not something that I kind of quite got around until I was giving it just a bit more thought. But I thought it was a pretty interesting ending for considering all the carnage that happens throughout the movie. So this one is definitely worth a watch. And then also whenever David sees this one, we should bring this one back up for conversation. The next one was Nimona on Netflix. Very strong film, particularly strong animated movie, and I would be very surprised if we got around to Oscar nominations morning and this was left off the list for animated feature, because from what I understand, this was a movie that was being produced at Blue Sky, the former or the now defunct Blue Sky Animation Studio, which ended up going under because Disney shut it down when they acquired 20th Century Fox. And this film was one of the things that was, I think, one of the reasons for why I think Disney just shut down Blue Sky was because they were very, very scared, maybe the most accurate way of saying it, but maybe against the more LGBTQ elements of this story. They were not comfortable with how overt they were kind of making those themes to be front and center. And yeah, evidently, I looked through some tweets back in 2021. People were very angry, and there was a point where this was not going to see the light of day. But evidently, Netflix came to the rescue, or Annapurna, I should say, Annapurna Animation came to the rescue, and I'm so glad that it did, because I just thought that this was delightful, and kind of what I want out of an animated movie. And I think to me, this was kind of amazing in the sense of how unapologetic it was in its efforts to bring representation toward the forefront. And again, it's just one of those films that really just goes against the whole anti-woke mobs thing. Like, you can't make that work. You can't make good movies when you prioritize that kind of representation. Well, shows what you know. Did you see this movie? Because they made that work, and I don't think it was ever addressed in the movie, that because the central relationship in Nimona happens to be a same-sex relationship. Yeah. And there were two guys. And that's rare, because usually it's just two girls, and that's mostly how it is. Yeah. In animation, mind you.
And it's always like in secret too, like nobody knows about it. And it's only like nobody knows about it because they're, they don't want to like make the main character see like he's getting favor from his boyfriend, basically, because the boyfriend's like a prince or something. I can't remember. Right. But in this one, though, it's not secret because they're gay. It's a secret because of like basically the main character is like bottom of the how do you call it? Like,
the main character comes from the poorest amongst their I guess their caste system, whatever you want to call it. They have royalty, and he's not of royalty. He's also not of the higher elites. He ends up being picked by the queen for some ulterior motive that's revealed in the movie. But yeah, that's the central relationship. It shows you off the bat, and at no point throughout the film is that questioned. It's just accepted as it is, as it should be, which is ultimately the point of all of this. And I thought it was handled beautifully. And it's just like, well, this would not have happened if Disney were in charge of this movie still. Which only reminds you that Disney should not be in charge of everything, and that's just what it is. I wanted to ask you, though, people had a problem with the ending. I can't say I minded it too much, really. I guess it was I don't want to spoil it, but something happens in the end of the movie where I think the argument that some people would have is that it undoes a big moment. Is that, I mean, it didn't bother me ultimately, but I can understand why some people would be bothered by it.
Yeah, same. I didn't mind the ending. I laughed at the ending, like the very last second of it. I thought it was hilarious. But overall, though, I don't really mind it much, especially because I don't think we're gonna get a second one. Not because of like the views of it or anything. I think it was just, this is the ending of the story, and so you can kind of leave it for yourself. Like, I'd rather have this ending than this ending.
Yeah. I also saw another movie. This was called Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. This is very much like a teen movie but not the kind of teen movie you're thinking of. This happens to star um, Abby Ryder Fortston, who played Cassie Lang in the first two Ant-Man movies.
Hmm.
And this also stars Rachel McAdams and Kathy Bates and Benny Safdie. And this deals with the 1970s New York family that go out to the suburbs, and it kind of reminds me a lot of movies like The Edge of 17 or Eighth Grade. It's a lot of a journey of self-discovery to be, I think, a 12-year-old girl in sixth grade. So it's a whole vibe, and I think what kind of made the film remarkable was how it was handling religion, because one of the ways that the girl goes on the journey here is that she tries different religions. She goes to Jewish temple, Catholicism, Christianity, and then others, I believe. And so it's central to, I guess, the conflict of what's happening in the film, because religion kind of was wedging people apart. Because her family is of mixed religion. Her mother is Christian, her father is Jewish, and evidently that caused problems with other members of the family. So, but it is a very interesting watch, and it's a very good movie. The next one I saw was The Pope's Exorcist, which is a film that we talked about months and months ago when you and Alexis had seen it. So remind me, what was your guys' reaction to The Pope's Exorcist? Because I thought it was a lot of fun.
Those were exactly my words. It's just so much fun. Oh my gosh, I literally said that it just reminded me of a superhero movie,
right?
But there's no like big battle or anything like that. But it was just so much fun. It's kind of ridiculous in a way, but there's still good characters in this movie. There's still pretty good suspense and scary stuff, horror stuff going on and all that. But I mean, overall though, it's just fun. Good fun.
That's the thing. It's like, yeah, the horror stuff is not the best, but it's really good for what it is, Mm-hmm. When you're doing an Exorcist film in 2023, 2024, like what new are you really going to add that we haven't already seen, So it's like, I understand on that level. It's not, but the idea of like having Russell Crowe play this kind of like superhero priest was just like the funniest thing, and yet it worked. Mm-hmm. And I bought every line. I believed in, like, and he wasn't phoning it in. Like, he was committing to this performance.
Yeah.
And I guess the only way Russell Crowe could, but it was very entertaining. And that's can't say I was like horrified at the horror too much, but I just think like this film is really here to be of a different flavor. And then did they set up a sequel at the end? Is that, I don't know, which is I usually when movies do that, I'm like the Marvels, where I'm like, stop doing that. And on principle, just as a side note, movies should stop doing that. They need to stop devoting time in their films to set up sequels, because but here though,
I disagree. I love it when movies ended like that. I just like the whole idea of like on to the next adventure type of thing. I really like that. Okay. So to me, it was so much fun, because again, it was like a superhero. I wish I could remember the last line, but it was something like, like let's get them back to hell or something like that. I don't know what the line was, but like it was basically just something like that, and it's just so fun. And so, and I mean, you never know. Some people might actually be excited. I mean, I remember that this wasn't like an ending. This wasn't a setup at. No, it was at the very end. I can't remember. Fuck.
Transformers.
Yeah, I can't remember.
That was the post-credit scene, I believe. You said it was a G.I. Joe or tease or something.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I think it was an after-credit scene, so it doesn't necessarily count. But I would have loved it if they did it like at the very end. And yeah, basically at the end of Transformers: Rise of the Beast, the main character is going to some secret base, but you're thinking it's Sector 7 from the first Transformers movie. But he gets the card and he flips it. It's G.I. Joe, and I was just like, "Holy shit!" Like, I'm not even that big of a G.I. Joe fan, but I was still like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah, I get it. I'm not saying that they can't be done well. I'm just saying that I think, to me, it's one of the reasons why a lot of blockbusters are not doing great. That's one of the ways they can all feel the same, among many others, for sure. That's what I was saying there, because let's just go back to the Wonka movie. Did you interpret that ending as them setting up a sequel? Because there was this high profile personality on YouTube, Twitter, film, you know who I'm talking about. And this person was speculating about, not really speculating, but she was just like, "Oh yeah, let's do a Wonka sequel." And I'm like, I'm not sure that's what they were aiming for. I don't think that wouldn't work. This is a one and done. This is not, so that's why I get like, I get a little annoyed when a lot of movies do those endings, because then it invites this kind of question to films that very clearly are not setting up anything. But then, lo and behold, because we're so used to having endings being spent to set up the next thing, then we get nonsense like that. That's why I bring that up. Other things. So I ended up seeing what turns out to be the final Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse short, the Steamboat Silly. And this featured all of them, and it ended up just being a nostalgia trip. Mickey wanted to see all of his old films, starting with Steamboat Willie. They break out of the film and they kind of terrorize the city. And to me, if I didn't know any better, it really did feel like the team were like taking some pretty big slights at Disney, because I mean, what else can represent Disney today than nostalgia run amok, wreaking havoc and destroying civilization? And they're even, I think at the end, Minnie says to Mickey, like, you know, nostalgia is fun or something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but it can be, you know, it ain't the best thing in the world all the time, which is just pretty funny that this is coming out of the House of Mouse.
Yeah.
So, but it's a great animated movie, short film, I should say. Disney Plus. I also took just because it was already there. They did a Halloween special with them. They go to this witch's house and they all get turned into the Halloween costumes they're wearing. It's kind of, I don't know if it is, but it's made to look like stop motion animation. It's on Disney Plus, and I'd never seen Mickey and Friends in stop motion, so that's a pretty interesting choice. But I thought it was really entertaining. Definitely something to put on to the younger kids during the Halloween season. I also saw another short, Carl's Date, on Disney Plus. Again, you guys saw this in theaters.
Yep, they showed.
Tell me about that.
No, yeah, I can't. I think Ale didn't know about the short, but I did for sure going into the movie. We saw it during Elemental, and I mean, I knew the concept of it already, and I was just waiting for the gut punch moment pretty much the entire time. But Ale, though, she was the one that was like bawling, crying so much during that short, and I mean, it's understandable why. I mean, what's the main guy?
Ed Asner. That's or the character Carl Fredricksen.
Yeah, Carl. It was just so nice seeing him, how nervous he was for his date and everything. And I was expecting for like a twist. Like I thought when the date was gonna happen, the lady he asked out meant like dog date, or like you know, it's their dogs they're gonna hang out. I was waiting for that twist, but like they kept going and going. It's like, oh no, he's like actually going to see this woman. And so yeah, that was an emotional gut punch. But also, yeah, I totally forgot too. That was Ed Asner. Is that what I said?
Yeah.
That was his last, like.
Well, I evident either it was his or one of his last lines that he recorded for it, but also, I mean, the way that it ends, pretty fitting, if that's exactly what was the last couple of words he recorded as Carl. Yeah, pretty big gut punch, I would say, at the end of it. But yeah, I also saw on Hulu this movie called Theater Camp. This is a movie about a theater camp. These high school kids, middle school kids, go to this camp, and they're doing camp things. They're doing drama. They're singing in plays and musicals. And meanwhile, and it starts off in the most hilarious fashion. The person who's in charge has a seizure. She's in a coma for the whole movie, and her idiot son has to take over, and it's a shit show. So there's your hook. It's up to you if you want to go take it, but it's actually pretty entertaining. Her idiot son, who has no background in theater, he's one of those bro YouTube vloggers who's just like, and no one likes him. So there's that. Oh, I saw so much. I'll wrap up with, well, this is actually a whole, we'll save this one because we can talk about this more so. Iron Claw. Great film. Great performances. Maybe the hardest movie to watch all year long. If you're not aware of, as I was not, this film deals with perpetual tragedy. It is hard to sit through, and it is one of the most depressing films I've ever seen. You walk out of it and you're like, fuck. Yeah, but it's great. And Zac Efron gives his best performance. And like I was telling Peter, because he also was a bit befuddled at the idea that he was not being included as one of the potential nominees at this award season, considering that Iron Claw is supposed to be an award season movie. And it's just one of those things that if you come out in December, you kind of missed the boat. You kind of missed the boat at that point. And you got no one to blame but A24. And A24 has other priorities that look like. They got Zone of Interest and they got Past Lives, which have been getting nominated. And Iron Claw really hasn't been getting in anywhere, which is strange. Because if anything, Zac Efron should be included for Best Actor. I'll tell you this. Oh, you just reminded me of another movie I saw. I forgot to mention this. Which should tell you how I felt about it if I forgot I watched it in the first place. But I would think that Zac Efron in Iron Claw definitely is more worthy of a nomination, which you got to keep in mind, guys. This is award season, so the more worthy you are, the more likely you are of being excluded. So that's not really great, but he's more worthy of being in that category than Bradley Cooper is for Maestro. And not that Bradley Cooper was bad. Bradley Cooper was great because he's always great, as he is in Maestro. But if we're talking about which was the performance that will, I would say, stay with you more, it would definitely be Efron. And Iron Claw has a great ensemble, but it is just riddled with tragedy, and it's a hard watch, but it's a great movie. Going from that to Maestro. Maestro should be commended, and Bradley Cooper should be commended, if nothing else, for attempting to do a biopic by not making a biopic. Kind of in the same way that Oppenheimer operated, right? Because it is a biopic, but it's not really. Not in terms of how it was structured. However, despite the strong performances and despite the craft that's on display, which is very easily some of the best made stuff that came out from all of last year, how we spoke about this from some of the reactions that we were reading from last week, I think ultimately is where I landed with it. It ended up just kind of being empty all in the end. And it's the worst kind of empty because I think it was going for some really deep and insightful, thought-provoking stuff here. And I don't really think it ended up in that place. I think it ended up more of like, well, the performances were great, but I don't really understand what you were trying to say. And the more I'm thinking about it, the more it kind of feels like you think you were saying a lot, but you didn't really say much of anything. So it seems to me that Maestro is the weakest link this awards season. And I was so looking forward to the idea of there being an award season with not one of those movies being included. And it seems like we were wrong about that. because it has been getting in everywhere. Whereas Iron Claw should very much take its place. Color Purple should very much take its place. And speaking on that, I did see that also. And I have noticed that people have some interesting takes on it. I've seen that some people were, in fact, very critical of it. But I would say that to me, I thought it ended up working really well as a musical, even if, not all of the numbers were as memorable. I will say that this one did have two numbers included where I'm like, was that really necessary, especially if they were that short? But on the whole, I did like the music. I did love the performances. I think that the direction was really good, all things considered. Especially because you're kind of living up to Steven Spielberg's version of it from 1985. It's the same story, but there are notable slight differences in what they do with characterization. Subtle things, not overt things. There's more of a not gentler, that's the wrong approach, but there's just more nuance, I just should say here. And I think this is a version of the story that might end up pleasing Alice Walker, who was the author of the book, a little bit more than Spielberg's, because there was a choice that was made with the villain of the story that she ultimately had in her book, but didn't ultimately get with the Spielberg version of it. I guess to me, I can understand why The Color Purple hasn't been doing well, in that I think it's great. I loved it. I think Taraji P. Henson, Daniel Brooks, and Fantasia Barrino are worthy of nominations. Particularly, I think Taraji kind of gave the performance of her career, and she should be included, and she has yet to be included in a single nomination anywhere, which I find befuddling. But I'm thinking it's a combination of two things. This was the last movie that came out. A lot of these voters didn't see it. And even if they were screened, they didn't get it. And then it seems to me that from this crowd anyway, it just wasn't that well received. And so it seems like The Color Purple's chances are not going to be that good after all, which is a shame, because I do think that anyway, the performances should be honored, but it looks like they're going to be ignored, which is really sad. So last one I'll say for me, and we can share some thoughts because you saw this one as well. Rebel Moon.
Yeah.
I saw this because I just was like, what the hell? I'll just throw it on. Maybe I'll pay attention to it, maybe I won't. But I put it on after you and Peter saw it, and I mean, I was just like, was I surprised? No. This was exactly the movie that I thought I would end up with, because Zack Snyder's recent work, I'll just say it, has been some of the most incoherent content made. And this is no exception. In fact, there's a reasonable argument to be made. This might be the worst. To me, this wasn't even a movie. I felt like I was watching, gameplay. I felt like I was just watching a video game, but without any of the nuance, any of the intrigue. I mean, it's pretty funny to me how this is supposed to be his version of Star Wars, and it's pretty funnier that he somehow pitched this to Lucasfilm as if they would ever go for something like this. I do feel bad for a lot of the people in this movie, because I feel like they're only in this movie because their careers have kind of gone nowhere. Sophia Boutella, Ed Skrein, Jenna Malone. These are people who should, in theory, deserve better, and yet, even Ray Fisher, he's in this, even though I guess he was one of the better performances, I guess, supposedly, from what I'm reading. Yeah, this was pretty abysmal. I'll say I didn't have the worst time in the world watching it, but it very easily is the worst movie of the year. David.
Yeah, it was just boring. Really.
Yeah.
And then when you said that it felt like you were watching gameplay, it's more so like you're watching the cutscene in between the gameplay, but you're getting no context of everything in between.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so used to. Here's the thing. I'm so used to Zack Snyder films giving me no context. I guess I got used to it, which is it's a sad thing to say, but like he ain't the kind of guy that fills in the gaps for you. Like he leaves them wide open, and he leaves the audience with no way of being able to gain or being able to tell what the hell is going on or why we should care. Which are two important things to get to really interact with a movie.
Yeah, especially the we don't know if we should care part of it is what like makes this movie so bad. Like you see that one guy with the griffin scene, and like the way he shoots it. Like I won't, I won't lie. Like he is a good director. What I mean by that is like he knows how to like frame a shot. He knows how to like make it look visually nice. Some parts I saw some videos and there were some moments that was pretty bad, which is weird. But like he knows how to like make something look interesting. But again, there's no context to that. Like the part with the griffin, he's kind of like, let's show them that we're more than just our like chains and everything or something like that. But it's like I feel like I should have probably been emotional in that scene, but I don't really care for this character. I don't really care for the griffin. And then at the end of it, it's just done. Like we just gotta move past that now. I don't know. It felt like he was more so than anything. He felt like he was trying to write a show, but he never got that. But maybe we'll get more in this 4-hour cut.
One thing that I'll say is somewhat impressive was that apparently he made both Rebel Moon 1 and 2 for a pretty modest budget, which is, I would say, considering that one of the themes of this year in film has been these exploding budgets. That's something to compliment. I would say that it ended up looking visual effects wise pretty good. All the while, of course, I'm not sure there was anything resembling his usual visual flair in this movie. It definitely wasn't as flashy as I feel it should have been, honestly, considering this is the director of 300. And yet I don't think there was a single moment in this movie that came anywhere close to just visually wowing me. And then in some areas, it just ended up looking kind of generic at the same time, too. Considering that this is Zack Snyder, it looking generic, it's pretty bad. There's also just things that happen in the background that you cannot, I guess, are set up, but they kind of go nowhere. But at the same time, none of it's really all that interesting. So it's pretty failure of a movie. Peter said that this was Zack Snyder's ugliest looking movie. He said this was probably his worst movie. And he said that it not only was the worst movie of the year, but that it was so bad it made him miss BVS. Yeah. And his theory was that this whole Snyder Cut fan base has kind of gotten to his head.
I can believe that. At the moment, I wish I can remember what he said exactly. But basically, during that time of the whole Snyder Cut business going on, and I think we all noticed that he was definitely taking advantage of like the Snyder fans, like that he just wanted to get whatever he wanted, like, and he was going to use the fans to do that. Like that was I wish I can tell you like the exact moment of what it was he said exactly, but it just really bothered me that that's what he was trying to do that when he was trying to do that. And so yeah, for sure this whole thing just got into his head.
Yeah, but I don't know, I guess Netflix seems to be happy with him. I guess he'll just be a Netflix only director from now on.
Maybe.
We'll see. Anyway, what are the films that you saw?
If you want to see a better sci-fi movie, right here,
The Creator.
The
The
Creator.
Creator is much better.
Yeah, it's practically a masterpiece compared to Rebel Moon. Like, I mean, no, but for real though, I actually really enjoyed this movie. I like the concept of it. I love the visuals. Like, this was just a visually interesting movie and all that. And I like the main characters, the whole father-daughter relationship going on and everything. I mean, it's a really fun sci-fi movie. Definitely just watch it just because like it's something original, something nice, and I think this one just does deserve a spotlight. I mean, kind of.
I want to see a Gareth Edwards movie with somebody else writing the script, because I feel like I want it more out of the creator. Ultimately, is why I kind of was unsatisfied by it. Not that I was bored, but I think there were. One of the things that I thought was pretty funny, and maybe that's not even the right word. I think it was just poor timing. It felt very tone deaf because of how much this movie came to the defense of AI, all at the time that everybody was on strike because AI and the threat that it had over this whole industry. So I just think it came out at the worst time, because when you have that in your mind and you watch this movie and it's going so far out of its way to defend AI, you're like, what? This thing is threatening us. So it's like that did not make for the best feeling experience, because you're just like, what are you saying here?
Yeah.
Are you? But that's kind of the key thing is Gareth Edwards, from what I understand, doesn't ever really say much of anything with the movies, because they're not really made to be that way. With this and Rogue One and with the Godzilla 2015 movie, it's just the similar complaints that I've heard from everybody. And I just think, like with a lot of other directors, like Zack Snyder, like J.J. Abrams, stop writing your own shit and get some people who are actual writers, and then just direct those scripts.
Or at least like get someone who can like look at it and just give him credit to,
or find your own collaborator,
co-creator,
like what Tom Cruise did with Christopher McQuarrie, with Top Gun and with the Mission Impossible movies, like, or how Emma Stone has found a collaborator in Yorgos Lanthimos from The Favorite to Poor Things. Like, there's just, you got to stop writing your own scripts, especially because the results continuously end up being not the best.
Yeah.
This is not a bad movie by any means.
No,
it was entertaining, and the visuals are like, for $80 million, fucking incredible, and definitely worthy of a nomination for visual effects. Very, very worthy of it. So, if anything, Edwards has things going for him that make him very attractive for future projects. I just think he needs to stop writing his own stuff.
He didn't write Andor?
No. Well, he was not involved in Andor. That was Tony Gilroy. Tony Gilroy was the person who basically came in to fix, quote unquote, Rogue One.
Oh, okay.
Remember, Gareth Edwards initially directed Rogue One. There were a lot of problems internally. Tony Gilroy was the person they came to reshoot and rewrite, and then Tony Gilroy was the one that ended up basically doing Andor.
Oh, okay. I bet.
Gareth was not involved at all in Andor.
Okay.
And it shows, quite frankly.
And then
yeah, go ahead.
The other movie I saw was called Robots. This one's basically a comedy. This one's just like, I saw Creator on Hulu, and then I went down to recommend it to see if there was anything else. I thought maybe it would show something from this year. And it did. Robots came out this year, and it's basically a comedy where people use AI robots basically to do just all their chores, collecting trash, some cleanup stuff, and all that. And the thing though is that it is illegal to make a copy of yourself basically into a robot and have them do like your stuff basically. Like if you have to work at a 9 to 5, you can't take your robot there and all that. So the two main characters, they did that. But the main guy, he uses his robot to get dates with girls, and then he switches with his robot as soon as the girls want to have sex with him. Yeah. And then the main girl, she goes on dates with rich dudes, buys like, gets them to buy her stuff. Basically, she's a gold digger. And then she switches with her robot whenever the guys want to have sex with her. And so both of their robots met, they fell in love, and now they were trying to run away to Mexico because Mexico AI robots have, basically they have human rights and all that. And so now it's just a race to try to get the robots back before they either get arrested or before they make it to the border because they don't want to lose their robots.
Okay. I had not heard of this movie before.
Yeah, no, like I said, it's just popped out randomly on Hulu, so I didn't know about it. But like, it was pretty entertaining. I really just like the main characters. They grew throughout this movie from coming from assholes to trying to become fairly good people. And so yeah, it was pretty entertaining. So
okay. Before we go on to the awards stuff, we didn't really. Then we ended 2023, but since we have this time, do you have some clear favorites from last year, or a favorite?
A favorite,
or a couple. You could say like maybe you can name like 2 or 3 movies from last year that you thought were your favorites.
I mean, Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Actually, I really do gotta look at it. Wow.
I would say that for me, my favorites of last year were Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Killers of the Flower Moon, and The Boy and the Heron. So far, that's what my top 3. And I'll also give out mentions to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Past Lives, and Oppenheimer.
Yeah, Spider-Verse for me. Killers of the Flower Moon. Third one's kind of hard.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
That's good enough, because this is not an official top 10 show, which I should also mention that that for us doesn't come until after the Academy Awards have aired. So we still got, for us, we need it because we're just people, guys. So we have to take our own time to watch all of these freaking movies. This last week and a half, I've been like on a marathon trying to like get as many of them out of the way as possible, because I'm not going to have that much time once work starts back up again. So, but usually, because we like to see as much as we can, we don't do our top 10 show at the end of the year. We do it at the end of the season, which is after the Oscars have aired. So that's when, and David will be on this year. So that'll be a difference in how we do things. And then will anybody else be able to make it? I don't know. We'll see, because everybody's schedules are so out of sync, but we'll see. Okay. I want to get to these Golden Globe predictions, okay? And then we'll wrap up for today. We're not gonna do too long of a show for today. So this is an interesting situation because we can't really rely too much on how things have gone in the past, because they've changed from a 90-member body to an over 300-member body. Some big sweeping changes were made. As a reminder, you can watch it today, which is when this podcast drops, January 7th, on CBS or Paramount Plus. And here are the categories. I'm only going to talk about the film categories because, quite frankly, I couldn't be bothered about the TV stuff. I don't care about the TV stuff. That's somebody else's business. I'm going to start off with the category that everybody loves to dunk on, cinematic and box office achievement. As a reminder, the nominees were Barbie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, John Wick Chapter 4, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, Oppenheimer, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the Super Mario Brothers movie, and Taylor Swift The Eras Tour. David, if you were handing out this prize, who would you give it to?
Yeah, Barbie. I mean, I just don't think it's gonna get any other awards. So I mean, it's very clear to us that that's the reason why they made that category. So
yeah, I thought it was clear to me, and a lot of the awards podcasts that I've been listening to feel kind of strongly that Barbie might end up winning some bigger awards down the line, even in just this telecast. And I'm not so sure about that. To me, I thought it was pretty blatant that the only reason this exists was so they can have an excuse to give Barbie something. Which is why I think that's my prediction. I think Barbie's going to take this easily. It's going to walk away with this because I don't. I mean, it may win elsewhere, but I don't. Let me just check. I only have it winning one other thing. I only have it winning here for box office. I don't have it winning for Best Picture Comedy. I don't have it winning for Ryan Gosling or for Margot Robbie, or director. So it just seems to me like if you're gonna give Barbie anything, this is the place you're gonna give it to. Some people were saying that, oh yeah, they're gonna give that to Taylor Swift, and I'm like, they've had plenty of chances to give Taylor an award in the past. They never have. There's no point to do it now. It would be pretty, and also this is the thing. The Golden Globe of the past might have done this, but there's been significant changes. There's much more of an international component to them. I feel like they got more critics to actually be in as a group now than just journalists. So I'm going to say that's not going to happen. I mean, this is the body that gave Bohemian Rhapsody Best Picture years ago, but things have changed. So we'll see how much they have. If not, well, we'll find out pretty sure. Okay. The next category I want to get to is for Best Picture. This is how they call it, because some groups call it foreign language. Some groups call it international film. They're calling it Best Picture non-English language, even though there is English in some of these movies. Anatomy of a Fall, which features English, but also features a different language. Fallen Leaves, Io Capitano, Past Lives, Society of the Snow, and The Zone of Interest. Anatomy of a Fall may win here, but I'm going to predict a winner who will not be nominated elsewhere because this film, I don't believe, is eligible by the Oscar rules for international movie. Past Lives. I'm going to give it to, even though honestly, the more appropriate winner would be, because Past Lives is America. So it's American made. So it's not going to be eligible for international movie. And I think ultimately, if you're thinking about what's going to win the Oscar, it's either going to be Anatomy of a Fall or The Zone of Interest. But for here, why do I think Past Lives will win? Because Past Lives got in a bunch of other places. It got in for screenplay, it got in for Best Actress, and it also got in for Best Director, which Anatomy of a Fall and Zone of Interest did not. So just going off of the strength of Past Lives, and if Past Lives is going to win anything, it might be here. So that's where I'm going to go with Past Lives. I have not seen Zone of Interest yet. I gather many people haven't seen that movie yet because it's playing nowhere. But I have seen Anatomy of a Fall, and if it ended up winning, that would also be an amazing winner.
Yeah, for sure.
And I also I don't know why I'm mixing up my words today. I'm sorry, guys. Should. I also should add that there are plenty of other movies that are not even mentioned here that should be, and probably won't be, like Godzilla -1 or Boy and the Heron. Very much international movies, but we're not nominated here. Also, Perfect Days from Japan was not nominated here at all. Okay, so that's Past Lives. I predict will go for the non-English language category. Okay, the next one here, David. This one might be the most anxiety-ridden category because I think, to me, more than any other category, this might be a coin toss. You just flip a coin and see who wins. Animated feature. The nominees: Wish, that's not winning.
No.
Suzume, haven't seen it. I am gonna see it. Have not. That's not winning.
I've heard good things.
I've heard good things too. The Super Mario Brothers movie, that's not winning.
No.
Elemental, that's
No.
also not winning. This is down to The Boy and the Heron and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And honestly, I who knows, right? Because I just said that these two movies were two of my favorite of the whole year. Like, to me, they're literally side by side. They're very different movies. They go for very different things. It is harder, I would say, for sequels to win in the animated category. The only exception ever seems to be Toy Story. Toy Story, I think, is the only, like, with Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 4, they've both won usually over others, but sequels have a hard time winning. Except I think in 2015, the Globes, because I guess Lego Movie was that one thing nobody wanted to touch, they, instead of giving Lego Movie the prize for best animated movie, they ended up giving it to another film that I would say was pretty worthy of a win. The second movie, I think it was called How to Train Your Dragon 2, right? So they won here. So there's that precedent. But usually it's tough for sequels to win, especially when the first installment already won before. So that's one thing that you could say is against Spider-Verse. On the other hand, I think Spider-Verse has been winning more critics' prizes, and Spider-Verse has been appearing in more Best Picture nominees than Boy and the Heron. But Boy and the Heron has also been winning its fair share of critics' prizes for animated feature. It's been popping up in a few Best Picture lists. But I would say this. I think, to me, what's going in my head, I think what gives Boy and the Heron an edge, aside from the whole Miyazaki thing, because of course this may be his final movie, who knows, but he came out of retirement for it. But I'm thinking, if you look at the nominees, what struck everybody was how well Past Lives did, how well Anatomy of a Fall did, and how well The Zone of Interest did. There were even other movies like Fallen Leaves got in other categories. If you go with that idea that this body is much more of an international component, would it then not be reasonable that Boy and the Heron might have an edge? And also keep in mind, both Spider-Verse and Boy and the Heron were got nominations outside of this category, because they both were nominated for Best Original Score. So if you're looking for like what got more nominations over the other, they both got the equal amount of nominations. So that's why I'm saying it's kind of a coin flip. I'm gonna lean Boy and the Heron, even though I think like everybody seems to be of the mind that Spider-Verse is the front runner to win the Oscar ultimately. But again, the Oscars themselves have a hard time giving it to animated sequels. I'm of two minds, David. I feel like I think The Boy and the Heron is maybe being a little bit underestimated, but at the same time, I can't really be so sure about that. What do you think?
I think at the end I might go for Boy and the Heron, just because for a time, I think Miyazaki said this was going to be his last movie. I think he just announced that it isn't now or something.
It's not.
Yeah,
he's working on the next one.
Yeah, but like, there was some anticipation for this, and I feel like they're going to pay attention to that, and so they probably got nominated for that. Because, I mean, has any other Miyazaki movie been nominated before?
Yes. I can't recall. I don't know how long they've been doing an animated feature for the Golden Globes. But they're not. His movies are not the most awarded. He has an honorary Oscar. This is a different body, obviously. And Spirited Away was the only one of his to win animated feature at the Academy Awards. I don't know how awarded or not Miyazaki is in by this group, but I don't know. I guess we'll have to see how this goes. But I'll say right now, Boy and the Heron, but only just barely. And this is the one that's like a coin flip. The next category I'm going to go with is Best Original Song. This one seems pretty easy, right? The nominee is Addicted to Romance from the movie She Came to Me. That's not going to win. I don't know what that is. Dance the Night, Barbie. I'm Just Ken, Barbie, Peaches, the Super Mario Brothers movie, that's not winning. Goodbye. The Road to Freedom by Rustin, that's not happening. And then What Was I Made For? What Was I Made For?
Yeah. That's
And it's like I want to stress though. I do feel I'm Just Ken kind of deserves it more for just the fact that it works. You know?
Yeah.
But What Was I Made For? I understand those that say is the song of the movie, really. It is the Barbie song, and it's also just a beautiful song too. At the same time, this is a past winner. Billie Eilish has already won, and very recently, she very well is going to win again, I think, for What Was I Made For. It also got nominated for 11 Grammy Awards. This is pretty done, I think. And it also is just the kind of the song they go for. So I just feel like it's pretty done. David?
Oh yeah, What Was I Made For? For sure, it's gonna win. I actually would prefer the.
I'm Just Kidding.
No, the other one, Dance the Night or something.
Oh, Dance the Night. Okay.
Yeah,
that's a good song too.
Yeah, that one I really like. I'm Just Ken. I mean, it's fun. Like I feel like I'll probably listen to that one more.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just it's a little bit too ridiculous, I think, for them to choose. So
yeah, knowing who they are, that makes the most amount of sense for sure. The next category we're going to go with is Best Original Score, and this one also is maybe not hard to predict, but also just kind of a bloodbath in the way that I want two people to win here, and they're not going to, it looks like. Well, let's see. Robbie Robertson for Killers of the Flower Moon, Daniel Pemberton for Across the Spider-Verse, Mika Levi for The Zone of Interest, Joe Hisaishi for The Boy and the Heron, Ludwig Göransson for Oppenheimer, and then Jerskin Fendrix for Poor Things. I think it's impressive when any animated movie can get in anywhere outside of animated feature. And two of them got in here, Boy and the Heron and Spider-Verse, and two of which I think are among the best scores of the whole year. I think ultimately, who should win here? I think to me the best score of the year was by Daniel Pemberton. At the same time, Joe Hisaishi has never won. This is his first nomination, which is crazy to me. This is a veteran that should be given something. At the same time, I mean, could that manufacture in a win? Maybe. Unlikely, but maybe. But then you got the Oppenheimer score. And evidently, Ludwig hasn't won at the Globes before. So, I don't know. I'm going to say Oppenheimer. That's just the safe choice. I would hope for a different choice, honestly. But I'm just going to go with Oppenheimer because that just seems to be the one that people like the most. I think Oppenheimer is an amazing score. And it would be a worthy win. I just happen to prefer both Spider-Verse and Boy and the Heron's scores to Oppenheimer. But that's just me. And I'm not a voter. And these people are. And I would think that Oppenheimer is the one that's going to win here. David?
I would like for Boy and the Heron to win, honestly.
If nothing else for Joe, he needs a win. This guy has been doing scores years, and he's a legend. He's a legend.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just that between that one and Across the Spider-Verse, Spider-Verse, I feel like the score worked well in terms of like, I don't know how to explain it. Kind of, at least for Spider-Verse, I feel like I could listen to that one more by myself. Like I could just put it on in the car, and like I can be thoroughly entertained and all that. But with Boy and the Heron, though, I feel like the music doesn't work without the movie in a sense. For me, like you really do need to watch them. You really need both of them together, and they just work so well. And I feel like they got the tone for what they were trying to do with it better. If that makes sense, I don't know. I mean, it's just like, I mean, the moment when the heron shows up and you get like that close up of its eye, and you just get like one note, literally just one thing.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, oh, I get you. Like it was just this instant like click in my brain going like, I know what you're trying to do here. I know what kind of like world you're trying to bring into this. Like, and just in that moment, I'm not kidding you. I know it sounds exaggerated or like pretentious or something. I don't know, but but that's literally what happened in my brain. And then with with Spider-Verse again, like the whole score is very entertaining and everything, but I don't know. It's just I f- I think maybe the separation, that the fact that I can listen to the score without the movie maybe makes it less for me, I
Have you
guess.
tried listening to the Oppenheimer score without the movie?
I haven't. I'll probably try it.
See, to me, I'm a little bit different where I go out of my way to listen to every score without the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think for me anyway, they usually work outside of the film because to me, when I listen to the score, I can picture the movie in my head, and it, in a way, kind of reminds me. Me even functions as a bit of a rewatch for me. Um, but yeah, this one's interesting. I could see it going a different way. I mean, I could see it being Oppenheimer. I could also, if Boy and the Heron wins animated feature, it might win here. If Spider-Man wins animated feature, it might win here. Be pretty funny if, let's say, Spider-Man and Boy and the Heron split and one wins one and one wins the other. Could happen. Not impossible, but I'm just gonna go with Oppenheimer as the safe choice. But I'll just go on the record saying I hope for somebody else to win.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say that. Next category is for best screenplay, and I'm just gonna say this right now. I'm looking at last year's Globes as a bit of a parallel because last year's Globes, the Globes always award someone who ultimately may not end up winning Best Picture, but I just feel like that's a good thing because I would like for different movies to win at different places, as it should be, I feel. But last year, Everything Everywhere All at Once did not win screenplay, it did not win director, and it did not win picture, and ended up winning all three of those things at the Academy Awards. Last year was Banshees of Inisherin and it was The Fabelmans, and I was happy for both of those films because they didn't really register anywhere else after the fact. So good for them. But Fabelmans won director and picture, and then Banshees won Best Actor Comedy, Best Screenplay for Martin McDonagh, and Best Picture. And so I'm going to use those parallels as a bit of a guide here. And it starts with this category for Best Screenplay. The nominees were Barbie, Poor Things, Oppenheimer, Flower Moon, Past Lives, and Anatomy of a Fall. Oppenheimer could very easily win this. And if it wins this, at that point, it'll win director and it'll win picture. Flower Moon may. I don't think it will. Some people were saying maybe Barbie gets its only win outside, or maybe not only win. Because you could maybe say that Barbie will win box office, it'll win song, and maybe it'll take screenplay because this is both honoring Greta Gerwig and her husband Noah Baumbach, who wrote this together. Some people suggest, well, maybe this is the only place they honor Martin Scorsese, and they'll give him Flower Moon in screenplay. I could very easily see Oppenheimer winning here and then dominating the rest of the night. But I'm going to say, what movie here feels the most like Banshees? Poor Things. And they loved Poor Things. The script in this movie got a lot of nominees. So I'm going to say right now that my prediction is Poor Things. But if Oppenheimer wins, which very well could, watch out, because it may just be a sweep if that's the case. Any thoughts on that?
That one I'm just not sure of. I mean, it would have to be between Oppenheimer and Killers for me. But if anything, I'll probably say Killers. Probably.
Okay. Killers. All right. And that very well could win. Next one. This should be pretty easy. Best Supporting Actor in a Motion Picture. Willem Dafoe, Poor Things, Robert De Niro, Flower Moon, RDJ, Oppenheimer, Ryan Gosling, Barbie, Charles Melton, May December, and Mark Ruffalo, Poor Things. RDJ, right?
Yeah.
It would be pretty shocking if it wasn't him. And if it wasn't him, watch all of those people that do this Oscar punditry are going to be like, uh-oh. They're going to be calling, basically dethroning him as a frontrunner or somebody else wins. It would be pretty bad for him from a publicity standpoint if he lost here. But I just think, to me, this is where he wins. RDJ.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to tell you, I'm a little bit conflicted about how many wins I feel like Oppenheimer. I think Oppenheimer has the potential to win screenplay, supporting actor, score, director, and picture. And that might very well happen. And there are people who are saying that will happen. But I think to me, the Globes spread things around pretty well. And I'm thinking I'm already giving Oppenheimer 2. I'm going to say this. It would not surprise me. And in fact, I'm feeling that that movie might not be the one that ends up being on top at the end of the night. But for right here, I think RDJ is pretty comfortable in winning there. Any other thoughts on that one?
No, yeah, I agree.
Okay. The next category is for actor in a drama, I believe. Best. Oh no, I'm sorry. The next category will be for best male actor in a motion picture, comedy, or musical. Jeffrey Wright in American Fiction, Joaquin Phoenix, Beau Was Afraid, Paul Giamatti, The Holdovers, Matt Damon, Air, Timothy Chalamet for Wonka, and Nicolas Cage for Dream Scenario. When it comes to this, you just go off of the one you most likely believe is going to be a Best Picture nominee. The only one I see here, well, there's two. There's American Fiction and The Holdovers. I think The Holdovers is more liked than American Fiction, and so I'm going to go with Paul Giamatti. It just seems like the kind of performance that also would win. What do you think?
No, yeah, out of all of those, I think Paul Giamatti deserves the most. I don't know why, but I feel like American Fiction, I feel like should win. I haven't seen the movie, but like, I don't know why for some reason.
It's a comedy, sure, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, I'm not sure how much value these names on these categories have. It's just more of like it really is a popularity contest.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. Best male actor in a motion picture: Bradley Cooper in Maestro, Leonardo DiCaprio, Flower Moon, Coleman Domingo in Rustin, Barry Keoghan in Saltburn, Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer, and Andrew Scott for All of Us Strangers. I feel like, to me, this comes down to two. It comes down to Cillian Murphy in Oppenheimer, and it comes down to Bradley Cooper in Maestro. Who deserves this? Cillian Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
He could win. And if he wins here, that would be pretty big news for him going forward. It just feels, though, that considering that Maestro did very well at the nominations, it is the kind of movie they love. This is the only place I see it winning. And I think it might be here. I think it might, and it also is the star power of Bradley Cooper. He's been campaigning. Cillian Murphy has not. Just looking at how the race usually goes, I think it might be Cooper. Even though I feel strongly Cillian should win. Your thoughts?
No, yeah. We'll see the other ones. I honestly don't remember much about their performance. But Cillian Murphy for sure.
Mm-hmm. Best female actor in a comedy or musical: Fantasia for The Color Purple, Jennifer Lawrence, No Hard Feelings, Natalie Portman, May December, Alma Poitier, Fallen Leaves, Margot Robbie, Barbie, and Emma Stone, Poor Things. Emma Stone, right?
Yeah, probably her.
I
only watched Barbie, so I don't really know about the rest, but I feel like probably Emma Stone's just gonna be a shoo-in.
Yeah, she's well loved, and it's the movie. And that would mean that would be the combination, because that's, to me, and this is my spoiler, I guess, for what I think ultimately Best Picture Comedy. I'm going to predict Poor Things for Best Picture Comedy and Best Actress Comedy, and then Best Screenplay. That's the same trajectory that Banshee has had. Not this, basically the same package. So I could be very mistaken, but I feel like Poor Things is the kind of movie they would really respond to. So I can really see Emma Stone winning here. Maybe Margot Robbie, but I doubt it, honestly. The next one was for Best supporting female best female actor in a supporting role. Emily Blunt, Oppenheimer. Danielle Brooks, The Color Purple. Jodie Foster, Naiad. Julianne Moore, May December. Rosamund Pike for Saltburn, and Divine Joy Randolph, The Holdovers. This is the category where I think we might see a surprise because, look, I'm going to say my prediction is Divine Joy Randolph because she's the only one that's been winning. And she's been sweeping the critics' prizes. I've been talking too much. This is why I'm coughing.
It's water.
Yeah. But I don't know. Honestly, I think Divine, maybe Danielle, maybe Jodie Foster, maybe Rosamund Pike. I could see any one of those four winning. I'm going to default to the frontrunner, Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers. But I'm not feeling that confident in her winning. But it just could be a weak category. I'll just go with her.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's really criminal that Taraji P. Henson is not in this category for The Color Purple. She should be here. She should win. It's not happening.
I mean, the only two that from I saw was Emily Blunt, Oppenheimer, and Holdovers. But I would at first I was like, oh yeah, Emily Blunt will probably win it, but then you mentioned Holdovers, and I'm like, oh no, she deserves it.
Yeah, no, Divine is great. So she would definitely be someone who would deserve that. The next category that we're going to go to is for Best Female Actor in a Motion Picture Drama. Annette Bening, Naiad. Lily Gladstone, Flower Moon. Sandra Hüller, Anatomy of a Fall. Greta Lee in Past Lives. Carey Mulligan in Maestro. And Kaylee Spaney in Priscilla. They liked Anatomy of a Fall a lot. It got a lot of nominations. She could pull off a surprise win here. Sandra Hüller. That film does have its fans. Greta Lee from Past Lives, that movie also got a lot of nominations. She could pull off an upset here. However, Lily Gladstone, from a movie that got more nominations than both of those other two, and who has been winning a lot of the recent critics' prizes, I'm thinking she probably is the one that we would presume to win the most. And I have her winning here. But it would not shock me if it ended up going to Sandra or Greta.
Yeah. It's honestly,
yeah, said you?
I was going to say, it's honestly a toss between Anatomy of a Fall and Colors. Between those two.
For sure, man. And then the final ones, best picture comedy musical, Air, American Fiction, Barbie, The Holdovers, May December, and Poor Things. Holdovers didn't do that well. It missed screenplay and it missed director, so I don't see that one winning. I do not see May December winning. I don't see American Fiction winning because that also missed screenplay. I don't see Air winning. It's either Barbie or it's Poor Things, and I'm going to go with Poor Things. I think that's going to have more wins, and I think it's the likelier to win. I think that's just pretty conventional.
Yeah.
And then Best Director, the nominees for that were Bradley Cooper in Maestro, Greta Gerwig, Barbie, Yorgos Lanthimos, Poor Things, Christopher Nolan, Oppenheimer, Martin Scorsese, Flower Moon, and Celine's song Past Lives. Everyone will tell you that this is the one that's a lock, and that would be for Nolan in Oppenheimer. The one thing that gives me pause is the fact that this was one of the few places last year that went against conventional wisdom. That instead of awarding the Daniels like everybody else was, they awarded Spielberg for The Fabelmans. On top of the fact that Martin Scorsese has won here 4 times, and he's won for films like, I believe, Gangs of New York and Hugo. I don't think it is really... I'll tell you this. It's not the odds-on favorite, but I'm just going to go ahead and put myself out there. I'm going to predict Scorsese for director. Because I really do think they liked Flower Moon. And I think that's a movie they really responded to more than Oppenheimer. A little bit more. Well, I mean, we'll see when the winners are announced. But it's just a guess. That's all we can really, I guess, put at this. But I'm going to say that Scorsese wins for Flower Moon. And with Lily Gladstone, that would give the movie 2 wins. And this is where Best Picture drama is a bit of a conundrum, because I want to say, well, the nominees are Anatomy of a Fall, Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Past Lives, and Zone of Interest. To me, it seems like a no-brainer. Oppenheimer. But if you give Scorsese director, how are you not going to give Flower Moon picture? And last year, it was Spielberg won director, and then he won picture. There usually seems to be a symbiotic relationship between that. But it could be Scorsese wins director, but Oppenheimer wins picture. Here are the telltale signs. If we get to the point where if Cillian Murphy wins Best Actor, it might be an Oppenheimer sweep. If Oppenheimer wins screenplay, that is a telltale sign that it'll win director and picture. It could be that maybe Oppenheimer wins. No, I think if it wins screenplay, it's getting director, it's getting picture. But Flower Moon, I think you can have Lily, Marty, and then picture ultimately. But it's hard because I think to me, these predictions they're going to become pretty clear as the night happens and what we see is winning and what we see is losing. Here's what gives me pause. I can see them giving Flower Moon director and picture. But am I really going to have Oppenheimer only wins for score and RDJ? So I'm nervous about that because Oppenheimer is a strong film and you'd think that it would do very well. But not for nothing, the movie that won Best Picture last year only won 2 things here last year. And that was for Ke Huy Quan and Michelle Yeoh. It got nothing else at the Golden Globes. So now it's hard. It just depends on how well Poor Things is doing. I think if Poor Things is doing how I expect it to, then Oppenheimer is vulnerable. But if Oppenheimer wins, like a lot of things early on, then that's a different situation. But I'm going to go with Flower Moon as my prediction for picture. But it could also be that Flower Moon wins picture and then Nolan wins director. It's a hard thing to really kind of parse through until you're actually there that night. Your thoughts on all this babble that I'm talking about, David? If that's even making any sense.
No, I get it. But I mean, ultimately for me, I would like for Nolan to win Best Director and Killers to win Best Picture.
See, a lot of people feel the way you do. And can you help me make sense of that? Because I feel like it makes sense the other way. I feel like Oppenheimer is the movie of the year, and that one should win picture. But I do feel Flower Moon is the best directed of the year, and I think that, and it also happens to be Marty. So, what's your rationale behind why Flower Moon should win picture and Oppenheimer should win director?
I think it just depends what you like. I guess your definition, of director.
Sure.
Because, I mentioned, I think Zack Snyder is a good director. He can make interesting shots. He has an idea of like how he wants his movies to look and everything. And so with Nolan, I mean, he went beyond just the look of the movie. I mean, details in not just the score, but also in the sound effects, that scene where they're taking
the
away
visual effects, no CG.
No CG. Yeah, I mean, not just that, but like, the scene where they take away the bomb and you hear the chains rattling on the box and you still hear it like way past like when it's far, far gone. But then also, the one where you hear the stomping of people's feet in the beginning of the movie, and then later on you find out like that one, you just don't get a good sound designer to do that. Like he must have thought of that from the very beginning of like what exactly he wanted to put beginning, middle, and end to really like build up to certain moments. And I feel like for that he deserves to be nominated. I mean, he deserves to win Great Director. Now for
Flower Moon,
him, a lot of great visual moments in that movie and everything, but he just didn't go at that level of what Nolan did, really. And that's the only reason why I think Nolan should win. He really thought out his movie through and like executed it well. And I mean, it's not to knock down Scorsese or anything like that. Like, he is still a good director. The reason why I think he should win for Best Picture is because of his direction and like visual eye and everything. I felt something with his visuals. That scene where the grandmother dies and then you see, and it's just a forest in the background. It's silent. And like, that was one moment that I just wanted to stay in it. Like I'm not kidding. Like, it almost took my breath away of like how that looked. And you don't really get that with Oppenheimer. I think the only moment I think people will argue is the part where the bomb goes off. Where it's silent and everything. It's kind of intense. You're waiting for the sound and everything. But that was just more intensity. I didn't really feel emotional about it. I wasn't really like, oh my gosh, they made what's the line? For I am death or something like that, or like you just
now I'm destroyer of worlds.
Yeah,
I'm become death.
Yeah, it's like there's nothing about that like made me feel as emotional as what Nolan did with his not Nolan, Scorsese did with his movie, and especially the ending of Flower Moon, where Scorsese, you see him in the movie and he gives off the eulogy of the main character,
Molly,
Molly, and then it just cuts to her people alive.
Right. To me, it's
like you don't. Whatever I felt, I did not feel that for Oppenheimer, and that's why it deserves Best Picture, especially because at the end of it, a movie should make you feel something.
Yeah. To me, I agree with you completely. I think to me that last scene in Flower Moon was the moment of cinema 2023, the most powerful moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that should be recognized in some way. I would be very disappointed if Flower Moon only won for Lily Gladstone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it should at least win either screenplay or directing or picture, one of those, not all of them, but one of those. And I think it will. It's just depending on how it's going to fall. But I think that was a very astute observation. I agree that Oppenheimer is the more, I guess, directing achievement, if you will. And if that's how we're going to put it in that context, that usually ends up winning with these crowds. But I guess we'll see. And I guess if anyone's listening to this podcast, well, you already know, because the awards are happening at the very time that this would probably be put up there. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and end things off here for today. We'll have more in-depth reviews on these films that we mentioned here when we have more people who have seen them. And of course, we'll keep you posted on how award season is going and what other movies we see here on Red Spotlight. We have another great year planned for you in 2024. Thank you so much, David. Thank you all here for listening. Stay on our Spotlight for more content. See you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.